49. That's the confirmed number. 49 lives extinguished, 49 families forever shattered. Gary Ridgway, the monster hiding behind a mundane facade, cast a long, dark shadow over Seattle. For 2 decades, the city lived under a pall of fear. The Green River Killer's gruesome handiwork, a constant, terrifying reminder of his presence. The victims, mostly young women on the fringes of society, vanished without a trace. Their families' pleas for help echoed unanswered, their hopes dwindling with each passing day. The Green River, a lifeline snaking through the city, became a watery grave. Its dark, murky waters held secrets that would haunt the community for decades. The river, once a symbol of life and vitality, turned into a silent witness to unspeakable horrors. Its banks, once serene and picturesque, transformed into dumping grounds for Ridgway's victims. The overgrown vegetation and the eerie silence of the riverbanks masked the grim reality beneath. Each ripple in the water seemed to whisper the names of the lost, the forgotten souls who met their end in this forsaken place. He preyed on the vulnerable, the forgotten, the women society deemed disposable. These women, often overlooked and marginalized, became easy targets for his sinister plans. They walked the streets alone, unaware of the predator lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike. Sex workers, runaways, drug addicts, they were easy targets, their disappearances barely registering as blips on the radar of a society more concerned with itself than with those living on the margins. The dark alleyways and run-down streets became hunting grounds, where the most vulnerable were left to fend for themselves. He lured them with a false sense of security, a promise of companionship or a quick fix. His charm and deceitful nature made it easy for him to gain their trust. They believed they had found a friend, someone who understood their plight, only to be met with unimaginable terror. Then he would unleash his brutality. The facade of kindness would drop, revealing the true monster within. In those secluded areas, far from the prying eyes of society, he committed his heinous acts, leaving a trail of broken lives and shattered dreams in his wake. The Green River, once a symbol of life, now bore the weight of countless tragedies, a silent testament to the darkness that lurks within humanity. Ridgway was a phantom, blending seamlessly into the fabric of everyday life. A truck painter by trade, he used his knowledge of the area to his advantage, disposing of bodies in remote wooded areas. He stalked his victims with chilling meticulousness, studying their patterns, learning their routines. He was a master manipulator, a chameleon who could blend into any crowd, his monstrous nature concealed beneath a veneer of normalcy. The discovery of the first 5 victims in the summer of 1982 sent shockwaves through the city. The bodies were found along the Green River, a serene waterway that had now become synonymous with terror. Each victim was a young woman, their lives brutally cut short, their dreams forever silenced. The city of Seattle, known for its vibrant culture and scenic beauty, was now gripped by fear and uncertainty. The sheer brutality of the crimes, the chilling similarities in the victims' profiles, pointed to the work of a serial predator. Panic gripped Seattle. Families were afraid to let their daughters out of their sight, and the community was on edge. The media frenzy only added to the hysteria, with headlines screaming about the Green River Killer. The police were under immense pressure to solve the case, but the killer seemed always one step ahead. The Green River Task Force, a dedicated team of investigators, was assembled, determined to bring the killer to justice. They worked tirelessly, sifting through mountains of evidence, interviewing countless witnesses and following up on every lead. The task force was a mix of seasoned detectives and fresh recruits, all united by a common goal: to stop the killer before he could strike again. But the investigation was hampered by dead ends, false leads, and Ridgway's cunning ability to evade detection. The killer was meticulous, leaving little evidence behind, and the task force often found themselves back at square one. The frustration was palpable, but they refused to give up. They knew that every piece of evidence, no matter how small, could be the key to cracking the case. It was a race against time. a desperate search for answers before the killer could claim another victim. The task force worked around the clock, driven by the haunting images of the victims and the hope of bringing closure to their families. The city watched and waited, praying for the day when the Green River Killer would be brought to justice. The earth had yielded its secrets, but the hunt for the truth was far from over. Years turned into decades. The passage of time did little to heal the wounds left by the Green River Killer. Families waited in agony, hoping for answers that never seemed to come. The case grew colder with each passing year, becoming a haunting spectre in the annals of American crime history. The Green River Killer case became one of the most notorious unsolved mysteries in American history. Investigators were relentless, but the elusive nature of the killer left them grasping at straws. The community lived in fear, knowing a predator was among them, yet justice seemed perpetually out of reach. Then in 2001, a breakthrough. Advances in DNA technology, which had been evolving rapidly, provided a glimmer of hope. Scientists and forensic experts worked tirelessly, re-examining old evidence with new tools. The meticulous process of DNA sequencing opened doors that had long been shut. Advances in DNA technology allowed investigators to link Ridgway to the murders. The evidence was irrefutable, and the long-sought breakthrough finally came. The arrest was swift, and the community breathed a collective sigh of relief. The monster who had terrorized them for so long was finally in custody. He was arrested, charged, and finally, the reign of terror came to an end. The courtroom became a battleground for justice, with prosecutors presenting a mountain of evidence. The trial was a media sensation, drawing attention from across the nation. People watched, hoping for a resolution to the nightmare. In a plea deal that spared him the death penalty, Ridgway confessed to 48 murders, later admitting to a 49th. The sheer number of his victims was staggering, each confession a dagger to the hearts of the families. The plea deal was controversial, sparking debates about justice and morality. Ridgway's confessions were chilling, each detail more horrifying than the last. He led investigators to the remains of some of his victims, providing agonizing closure to families who had endured decades of uncertainty. The search for bodies was painstaking, each discovery a somber reminder of the lives lost. He led investigators to the remains of some of his victims, buried in remote locations. The recovery of these remains was a grim task, but it was necessary for the families to find some semblance of peace. The process was long and arduous, but it brought a measure of closure to those who had suffered for so long, providing agonizing closure to families who had endured decades of uncertainty. The emotional toll was immense, with vigils and memorials held to honor the victims. Families gathered to mourn, to remember and to support one another. The community came together, united in their grief and their quest for justice. Justice had been served, but at a terrible price. The scars left by the Green River Killer would never fully heal. The case was a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that can lurk within humanity. As the names of the victims were etched into memorials, their stories would not be forgotten. Section 6. Echoes of Silence, Systemic Failures. Ridgway's capture brought no sense of triumph, only a chilling realization of the systemic failures that allowed him to operate for so long. The victims, marginalized and forgotten, were failed by a system that should have protected them. The investigation, hampered by bureaucratic inefficiencies and a lack of resources, struggled to keep pace with a killer who exploited every loophole. Section 7. The Unhealed Scars of a Community. The Green River Killer case left an indelible mark on Seattle. The city, once known for its vibrant culture and natural beauty, now bore the weight of tragedy. The families of the victims, forever haunted by the loss of their loved ones, struggled to rebuild their lives. The fear that gripped the city during those dark years lingered, a constant reminder of the vulnerability of human life. Section 8. Protecting the Vulnerable, a Collective Responsibility. In the wake of the Green River Killer case, there were calls for change. Law enforcement agencies vowed to improve communication and coordination. Social services organizations pledged to do more to protect vulnerable populations. The case served as a stark reminder that the safety and well-being of all citizens, regardless of their background or circumstance, must be paramount. Section 9. The haunting legacy of the Green River Killer. Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, is now serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. His crimes, a horrific testament to the depths of human depravity, will never be forgotten. But his legacy is not just one of horror. It is also a story of resilience, of a community coming together to heal, to remember, and to fight for a safer future. It is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can endure.